Alors, bonjour, merci tout le monde d'être là pour ce dernier Café Croissant avant les périodes estivales, l'été. Ce matin, l'événement va se dérouler majoritairement en anglais. Bio-Québec est vraiment très, très fier de ce nouveau partenariat avec Burton. Et ce Café Croissant est le premier de 4 Cafés Croissants. Il y en aura 3 autres avec Burton à l'automne prochain. D'ailleurs, on aimerait beaucoup avoir vos idées dans le chat, si c'est possible, pour les 3 prochaines rencontres à l'automne. Quel sujet aimeriez-vous qu'on aborde avec Burton? N'hésitez pas, s'il vous plaît, à utiliser le chat pour nous donner vos idées. Alors, this morning, I'd like to welcome members from BioForward Wisconsin. I see that Lisa is there. BioForward Wisconsin is an organization in Wisconsin, obviously, with whom we just signed a collaboration agreement, and Lisa is their president. I know she's there. I can see her name. Her camera is off, but thank you to Lisa for joining us this morning. We're going to start the Café Croissant with a presentation from our 2 guests, Brian Bloom and Vincent Nadeau, and I think Brian is actually mostly doing the presentation. And it will be followed by oops, I have people coming in, so I have to admit them. Sorry about that. And it will be followed by a question period, open camera. So you just need to use the, the button with raising hand, and I'm going to see your hand, and I'm going to allow you to speak, and we'll intervene like this. That's the goal of the Café Croissant, is to make it extremely friendly and close to the panelists. And so that's what we want to do this morning as well. And so let me right away introduce and thank you so much. Thank you so much for this wonderful partnership with you, Brian, and your organization, Burton. And I'm very, very happy to have you this morning presenting to some of our members. So Brian is the co-founder of Burton, and he serves as the firm chairman and chief executive officer. By forging unique relationship with international healthcare specialized investors, Brian raised capital for Canadian healthcare companies while helping investors realize return. Brian serves on the board of directors of Triumvira Immunologic, Apili, I don't know how to pronounce it, Apili Therapeutics, Satellos Bioscience, and King Bio Therapeutics. Brian is also on the Faculty of Science Dean's Advisory Board at McMaster University. He was formerly the chairman of the board of Grey Wolf Animal Health, a member of the Life Sciences Advisory Board at the National Research Council of Canada, and on the board of Biotech Canada and the Baycrest Foundation. With him this morning, if some people feel or prefer to ask question in French, Vincent is the Quebec officer for Burton, I understand. No, he's the vice president investment banking. He joined Burton in February 2015. He brings scientific R&D, business IP, and regulatory insight and advice to healthcare companies, supporting their growth and the monetization of exciting life science technologies and products in Canada. Vincent's expertise also supports newly formed Burton incubated companies, working with management teams to build value early on in their corporate life. So without waiting, gentlemen, this is a wonderful partnership with Bio-Québec, and the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Annie. Thank you to everyone at Bio-Québec. At Burton, we work with companies all across Canada. We certainly have a long history of working with companies in Quebec and helping them reach international investors, helping them go public, helping them with their corporate transactions. But we realized, actually Vincent realized, that it's been a long time since we've actually contributed to the ecosystem in this way. So we thought that by partnering with Bio-Québec to sponsor the Bio Croissant and to help organize some events that could bring our expertise and, more importantly, directly investors in front of your audience would be meaningful. And so that's what we aim to do this year. And we hope this is just the beginning of a long-term collaboration between Bio-Québec and Burton supporting Bio-Québec. So thank you so much, Annie, for being so gracious and such a willing and enthusiastic partner. And your team is great too, very professional. So we're going to do 4 Café Croissant events this year. The first one is probably going to be, this one. It's probably going to be the worst one because the topic is simply, I'm going to introduce Bloom Burton, but of course it will frame the discussions that we'll have for the rest of the year. Before we start, I would like to say that we're looking forward to coming up with topics for the next 3 Café Croissant topics or breakfasts, whether it's raising venture capital or going public or merger and acquisitions or anything, structuring valuation. There's lots of different ideas that we have, and we're very, very keen to hear what your ideas are. And of course, we could bring in speakers, we can bring in other guests. As you'll soon see, we have an unrivaled network and relationships with almost every global healthcare investor. So I think we can do something very special this year to the great benefit of the Quebec ecosystem and the Bio-Quebec membership. With that, I'd like to share my screen and get going. All right, very good. So before I start, let me just say that Bloom Burton was founded in 2008, and it was founded by myself and my partner, Jolyon Burton, who actually was living in Montreal when he and I met. We met in 2003, so almost 20 years ago, and we've been working together for 20 years. But previously, we were at another investment bank called Dundee Securities. And, I had a role in the Toronto office. Jolyon had the role in the Montreal office with a banker named Ron Vinette, who was a mentor of his. And, back in the day, we were advisors to companies like Procyon and Prometic and Thera Technologies. Some of those companies still exist under same or different names, probably different management teams, some not. Anyway, so, but we founded our own firm in 2008 in the depths of the financial crisis. I remember Lehman Brothers went bankrupt, and I think we hung our sign the next week. And it was a very interesting time to actually launch a new bank in Canada, especially one dedicated just to the healthcare sector. It was quite a risky and unprecedented thing that we did. And to do it in the middle of 2008, when the market was so uncertain, was often seen as, both brave and incredibly stupid. But it seems to have worked out because I think we built something very meaningful for Canada, meaningful for ourselves and investors and companies in the Canadian sector. The other thing I'd like to say while we just stay on the slide is just to introduce the whole reason that our firm exists. So we like to say that we accelerate returns in healthcare, but what we really mean is we provide a faster path to your monetization events. And I don't know how to translate monetization into French, but to us, a monetization event is any event that creates value. It could be the ability to raise capital, the ability to have a successful clinical trial, to engineer a medical device prototype, to gain regulatory approval, to go public, or to be partnered with a pharma, or to be acquired. All of those are monetization events that effectively take your passion, your ideas, and your energy and capital, and it converts it into some event that creates value for founders and for shareholders. And the whole reason that we exist is to accelerate that path to those monetization events. And all of our people, all of our services, and all of our methodologies work together to achieve that for the Canadian companies that we work with. Okay, so with that, we're a highly qualified team of about 30 people. And that makes us larger than, the healthcare team at FTQ or Lumira. We're actually the largest investment team in Canada. And almost all of the members of our team are people with a medical or a scientific or an industry, a pharmaceutical or healthcare industry background. So, we are very much healthcare people who choose to be in the investment industry. We're not investment people who, for some odd reason, chose healthcare. So I just want to be very clear about that. We have a range of services that I'll actually get to on the next slide that all work together to help companies accelerate their path to monetization. The traditional investment banking services are through Bloom Burton Securities, which are listed on the left. And, they are very similar to the investment banking services that you will find at Royal Bank or a National Bank or a Desjardins or a Goldman Sachs or a JP Morgan. And this is what we do as the only investment bank for healthcare in Canada. So the first thing we do is finance. We have raised billions and billions of dollars through helping broker private placements and underwrite public offerings for private and public companies. Again, 100% of what we do is in healthcare, which makes us quite different than the Goldman Sachses and the national banks of the world. But financing both equity and debt for private and public companies is probably the thing that keeps us busiest and the reason that most people knock on our door. Another service of ours is merger and acquisition advisory. We are the #1 ranked M&A advisor for Canada. We help companies restructure, we help companies buy or sell assets, or we put entire companies up for sale. And M&A advisory can also include fairness opinions, valuation opinions. We do that for tax reasons, certainly for folks in Quebec. And, it could also be working with larger banks, which we have before, like Bank of America or Jefferies, as sort of a Canadian advisor. And we buy and, oftentimes all of these services work together at various times. For instance, Jolyon and I were the lead bank that took Medicago public in 2006, and then we were part of the syndicate of advisors that took it private through an M&A transaction in 2013. So, we're pretty sticky, and we work with companies, often delivering many of our services over decades or over time. Institutional equities is sales and trading. So that's effectively, if you're a publicly traded company, like Bellis or Repair, we do trading on behalf of institutional investors. For instance, we have an account open with Genevieve's organization, FTQ, and we're quite useful in helping investors buy and sell securities for what they own or what they're trying to sell. Equity research, we actually have the #1 ranked equity research team in Canada. So we have 3 people, all PhD scientists or deep knowledgeable scientists who put buy and sell recommendations, again, for public equities, for companies that trade on a stock exchange. So we have coverage of about 25 companies. It's not just in biotechnology, which of course is the main aim of Bio-Quebec. It's also in healthcare services and specialty pharmaceuticals, companies like Knight Therapeutics, the former, Paladin Labs, these sorts of companies. But Pan Healthcare, our research is read by institutional investors all over the world, which of course helps companies gain more familiarity with investors all over the world. And monetization planning is our consulting practice. This is very important. Actually, Vincent is part of this team. He's part of our broader investment banking team, but monetization planning to us is giving advice that is not linked to a transaction. So I told you that the whole purpose of our firm is to help you get to your monetization event faster. Our consulting or monetization planning, advisory group performs due diligence on behalf of companies. Effectively, we're hired by companies to help answer really important questions that will be asked by pharmaceutical companies that may partner or acquire, and of course, that will be asked by investors, whether it's venture investors or whether it's public market investors. And we have worked with some of Canada's most important biotechnology companies on our monetization planning, including Quebec companies like Bellis. We've had a 4 to 5 year collaboration with Bellis. For instance, when they brought in the cough program from a wonderful Quebec institution, Neomed, which is now part of Admare, we led that due diligence, and we have continued. In fact, Vincent is lead on that file. Vincent and Roberto continue to collaborate together on all sorts of things, including how that asset can be developed beyond cough, and many other aspects of Bellis as they think scientifically how they're going to actually grow their company and create value. We have done work for Clementia and many other companies outside of Medicago too, our consulting group, and many companies outside of Quebec, including Aurinia and Xenon, and very well-known companies coast to coast. To the right, you'll actually see that we do direct investing. I can't promise that we have as much money as Fidelity or FTQ or Lumira, but we do have a $50 million fund platform in our direct investing. And we have a lending fund, mainly for revenue stage companies like CROs or pharmaceutical companies. And we do have an equity hedge fund, which allows us to invest in stocks. And I think our hedge fund has been up 40% or more for 2 years in a row. It's an eight-year fund. I think overall in the 8 years, we've had about 15% net of fee IRRs over those 8 years. So it's a volatile hedge fund, as biotech is, but a very good performer. And lastly, but not to be taken lightly, we are prolific creators of companies. Most investment banks, like the Goldman Sachs and the Scotia banks of the world, don't do this. It's usually smaller entrepreneurial investment banks like ours that do what's called merchant banking. But we use our own capital to launch new companies. And since 2015, when we started this, we have actually created 6 companies. 4 of them are biotechnology companies, and one of them is a specialty pharma. The other is a services company. We actually own and are the largest owner of the largest pain clinic, sort of specialty healthcare clinic in Canada, which is now public. So sadly, we've actually never partnered with an entrepreneur to create a startup in Quebec, but our companies that we have founded are based in, from Halifax to Vancouver and many places in between in Canada. We'd love to actually create a company that is based in Montreal. So those are all of our services. Without spending too much time, our methodology is on the bottom left here. And it's important to point out that because of all of our expertise in science and medicine, et cetera, we are known for our due diligence. We are known to be experts across all certain funding instruments: equity, debt, private, public, strange instruments like preferred shares and convertible securities. We're kind of agnostic to the security type. We have a healthcare company that needs capital or has a need. We have investors that want to invest in that company. And, whether it's a cross-border transaction, whether the investor is in Europe or the United States or Asia, and, or whether they're investing through any kind of security instrument, we are generally experts in all of those things, which means we're quite useful. The fourth point there is our relationship with healthcare specialized investors. This is incredibly important. We are the only investment bank in Canada with very, very broad investor relationships in Boston, New York, and San Francisco, London, and Asia, and elsewhere. And this is what we're most known for. I'm happy to say this because that's actually my job at the firm. My job is to, pre-COVID, live in airports and hotels and go all over the world to form relationships with venture capital investors, private equity investors, public market investors, crossover investors, lenders, strategic investors, corporate pharma investors. We really speak to almost every professional healthcare investor globally. And I think it's those relationships with those specialized biotech and healthcare investors that we are most known for. And the second last point, engagement with the community. You'll soon see all the events that we put on, including the Bloom Burton Healthcare Investor Conference, the Bloom Burton Award, and even our Christmas party. Many things that we do to bring, just like Bio-Quebec does. We believe it is our responsibility to engage with everyone in the community to help grow the Canadian sector in healthcare and biotechnology. So this is our team. Capital markets and advisory is investment banking. Those are the folks who get hired by management teams and boards to either raise capital, go to market, go public, do an M&A style transaction, or to get hired. I mean, Vincent's in there, to get hired to do our monetization planning work. Institutional equities are effectively salespeople. So I'm on the right with Sean Aston, who used to be the vice chairman of GMP Capital and leading their sales desk. And we have a team there. Equity research is on the bottom left. David Martin, he's our published research analyst, and he has 2 other analysts that work on his team. Burton Investment Group, Michael Brown, he's the portfolio manager of our direct investment funds. And then we have a wonderful corporate team that supports all of our work. This is our brag sheet. Obviously, healthcare is generally, when you think of healthcare companies in Canada that do financings and transactions, it's generally smaller companies. Canada doesn't have a lot of large companies. So you're not going to see RBC and National Bank and Bank of Montreal on this list. But these are the investment banks that do the most work financing companies in Canada. And for our entire existence, we have always been at the top. And the same would go for merger and acquisition transactions. This just shows that we work across all healthcare, biotechnology, pharmaceuticals, generic companies. We've done a lot of work with, Pharmascience and Apotex and smaller generic companies over the year, health services and devices and diagnostics. So, all kinds of healthcare companies is of deep interest to us. And I know that Annie mentioned that in addition to biotech companies, many of your members are in the digital health area, and that is a keen area of interest to us. Again, this is just another summary of, since we've started, it's been $4.5 billion of capital raised for Canadian companies across all different healthcare types, and a large number of merger and acquisition style mandates. And the next two slides, and I'm almost finished here, are just some of our recent activity. Again, you'll see therapeutics, you'll see pharma, you'll see medical devices, you'll see equity, you'll see debt, you'll see private companies, you'll see public companies, you'll see companies where we are the lead bank, or companies where we play more of a supportive role to a Jefferies or a Leerink or a Cowen or a US bank that do very large offerings. All right. This is a good case study of the kinds of investors that we're very good at doing work with. Some of our most important biotech transactions in the past couple of years have been ESSA, Bellus, and Field Trip. Field Trip's a psychedelic company. I don't want you to think they're like some, sleazy cannabis company. That they actually are a true soon clinical depression company. With a psychedelic molecule. So ESSA, Bellus, and Field Trip, before they were on NASDAQ, and while they were just on the Canadian exchanges, we are responsible for bringing in and attracting funds like Biotech Value Fund, RA Capital, OrbiMed, Samsara, Soleus, and Avidity. And, this is just a very, very small example of the venture, crossover, and public market funds that we work with on a regular basis to transact and to capitalize the best Canadian companies that deserve to be financed and deserve to be on the world stage. So these are great case studies. So it's just a little bit more granularity over the kinds of companies that David Martin and his team publish research on. Many are in Quebec. You could see Knight Therapeutics and Repair, Liminal. I think we've had a sell rating on Liminal. We've called that right for a very long period of time. And yeah, so we're always looking for more publicly traded companies in Quebec to work with. And on the bottom left, you'll see, we actually use this little widget, which kind of tells us, I don't know if I should be saying this, it tells us like who opens our research. We get this sort of blinded report, not blinded, but this report as to who's clicking on our research through FactSet, through Bloomberg, through the different through our own email blasts. And again, it is who you would want to be clicking on the research. It is the world's foremost reputable biotechnology and healthcare investors, from Deerfield to EcoR1 to Kasdan and Baker Brothers and Venrock, et cetera, regular readers of our research. And again, all the companies that we cover benefit from this. And again, many from Quebec. I think we can skip that. Well, I guess the last thing I'll say, just to circle back, is our events. Very, very proud to say that we run, I'm sure many of you in the audience know the JP Morgan Healthcare Investor Conference in San Francisco every January. And now that BioContact and BioFinance, kind of died 5 or 10 years ago, the Bloom Burton Healthcare Investor Conference is the premier conference for investors in healthcare companies in Canada. We just finished ours. We had 1,200 people attend virtually, which actually matched the 1,200 people that attended in person at the Metro Toronto Convention Center the year before. Next year's dates are yet to be, but I think it's going to be in person. So our investor conference attracts really important investors from all over the world. We hand select the companies that we want to present, and we have wonderful keynote speakers and panelists. This year's keynote speaker was the former FDA Commissioner, Scott Gottlieb. And we've had great keynote speakers in the past. The Bloom Burton Award is given out annually to the most important entrepreneur or leader or individual in the Canadian sector. We're about to have our 5th Bloom Burton Award. Sadly, it will be virtual this year, but it is usually a black tie gala at the Four Seasons Hotel in Toronto every September. Clarissa Desjardins was actually our winner in 2018. She beat Ali Tarani of Zymeworks and Richard Glickman of Aurinia that year. And it's a wonderful, you could think of it as an Oscar for a best actor. It's an award for an individual. And it's a very un-Canadian thing to shamelessly celebrate a success, which is what we aim to do with the Bloom Burton Award. And our holiday party is not just any holiday party. The last time we had it in person, we had 800 people. Which is probably the premier networking event for our sector in Canada. We literally have dozens and dozens of people fly in from Vancouver and from Montreal and from all over Canada to attend our holiday party. I know it sounds silly, but it's a great networking event. It usually goes on for 7 or 8 hours. I guess when you have an open bar, people tend to stick around. But we're happy to provide that platform for the whole Canadian ecosystem, and obviously it benefits us and everyone, which is why we do it. So that's us, and with that, I will pause, and I'd love to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Brian. I didn't know there was still open bar celebration. Wow, that's yeah, I understand why there's 800 people actually go and stay for 7-8 hours. I'm going to start the questions with Nadine, because she asked Nadine Boger, because she did ask the question in the chat. It's her first time at the Café Croissant. I had to mention to her that she can actually ask her question herself and open her camera. And Nadine is our new board member, one of our new board member at Bio-Québec. We're really happy to have her. So Nadine Boger is the president of Ericard. Nadine, you have the first question. And for the others, just to make it easier for me, please use the raised hand. Thank you, Pierre. She just did it. And Frédéric. Okay, I think we're going to have a lot of questions this morning. Wonderful. So good. Nadine, you're up first.
And Nadine, I think I know we've met before. So
we've met before, Brian. It's a pleasure to see you again. Thank you, Annie, as well. So, Brian, I was a bit surprised. Thank you for the presentation. And one comment that you made surprised me, that Bloom Burton hasn't been involved in a Quebec-based company, creation of a company.
Yep.
So is that true? So question, from the experience you've had across Canada, so what can we do in Quebec to to incite the first company creation with Bloom Burton going forward?
Yeah, I mean, everything starts with the idea. It's when we form a company, it's a lot like where did I go on this? Oh, there I am. Sorry. We don't actually go out and scour universities for technologies. It's generally when we're approached by a scientific founder who wants not just seed capital from us, but to form a partnership with us as owners and founders to actually grow a company. So I think it's not that we haven't looked in Quebec, or it's not that Quebec scientific founders haven't sought us out. It just hasn't happened. But what Quebec is doing is all the right things. I mean, Quebec is probably tied with Vancouver for being the most healthy ecosystem in Canada for starting new companies, with Toronto, of course, being a distant second, sadly. And, you do have the ingredients. You have the most amount of venture capital, local venture capital, thanks to FDQ and Terralise and other anchors in Quebec. And when we grow our seed stage companies, the biggest impediment is always people. And you have a wonderful ecosystem of talented ex-pharma and entrepreneurial biotech executives, that have learned from their pharmaceutical or their biotech, or that have come home after spending decades in Boston or Europe. And we find Quebec to be the richest area in Canada when it comes to actually recruiting and finding a C-suite level talent. It's very, very difficult in Canada, in Ontario and elsewhere. It's still difficult in Quebec. There aren't that many Clarissas and Lloyds, and that's just in their house, but there's only so many great CEOs. But I find that in the CFO, CMO, chief development, regulatory officers, Quebec is very rich in those kinds of talent roles. Perfect.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Pierre, you had your hand raised, but then you lowered it. Are you giving your space to?
Nadine really addressed the question I was going to address. Okay. But I just wanted to say, Brian, that I'm very impressed by what your firm has accomplished. I didn't realize the breadth of services and the number of mandates your firm had. It's quite remarkable. But maybe what I was going to ask was if you can give like an anecdote or a case to illustrate company creation done by your firm, and perhaps maybe it could be the topic of the next Café Croissant.
Sure. So, I mean, just so you know, this is the most difficult thing that we do at Bloom Burton. So far, it's been the most unprofitable thing that we've done, because unlike everything else we do, we don't make any fees for being the founder of a company. We hope to one day make a huge return on our equity. As I like to say, we're like Versant Ventures, but without the $1 billion. So we're not a venture capital fund. So here we are trying to form seed. And of course, being an investment bank, we can obviously attract lots of capital, even if it's not ours, even if we're not the VC. But it's hard. It takes a huge amount of our time. And it's still a question as to whether it'll be a profitable endeavor. I think it will. So, a great example of a company that actually does have that activity in Quebec is our T-cell company that we spun out of McMaster University called Triumvira Immunologics. Triumvira is sort of a next generation CAR T company. It's one of the only cell therapy companies in Canada, along with Notch. I don't think there's probably not more than 3 or 4. And, it was from the laboratory of Jonathan Bramson, who also grew up in Montreal. He went to McGill. And John is a brilliant immunologist at McMaster. And he had a novel way to target, cancer antigens by recruiting a natural T-cell receptor in a way that TCR Squared, an MPM Capital company in Boston, it's very similar to that. So it's considered a next generation to a Juno or a Kite or a Novartis CAR T platform. And, it's been around for, since 2015. So we founded the company. We gave 30% of the equity to McMaster. We took 70%. To this day, we own 12.5%. So we still own a meaningful amount. We raised about $20 million in angel and high net worth and family office capital in the first 4 years before we closed our Series A, which was US $60 million, which closed about 10 months ago. And that was with Bayer's Venture Capital Fund and North Pond and a series of other venture capital firms. So this month, we hope to close our Series B. We have just pulled our syndicate of US investment banks, which don't include Bloom Burton, to do our NASDAQ IPO, and hopefully that will go off in Q3 after Labor Day. So, Triumvira is based both in Hamilton, Ontario, where we have dozens and dozens of scientists, and we collaborate with C3I, which is, the cell therapy manufacturing Institute in the University of Montreal, where you are. And so that's where all of our manufacturing, C3I has made investments into Triumvira, and they've been great partners. We're just about to dose our first patient in a solid tumor CAR T trial at MD Anderson. But sadly, our corporate leaders are in Texas. So one of the lessons learned was we had the wrong CEO for the first 2 years of our life at Triumvira. And that's pretty much what, in my opinion, kept us from raising venture capital for, we didn't raise a VC round for 4 years. And so we learned that, even if you needed to go outside of Canada, you can't be patriotic just to be patriotic, right? I would love to, we wanted to build the whole company in Canada, but if the leadership didn't exist, then we needed to go outside. And we do have senior, medical and financial and an executive officer in Texas and Boston and Miami and New York. It's kind of a virtual US management team, but we have the best people in the world at Triumvira now, and they're spread out in the United States. Thankfully, we were able to maintain all of our scientific work in Canada, which is quite typical.
Thank you, Brian. Frédéric Leduc.
Actually, Brian, sorry to correct you, but there's at least 3 to 4 companies, cell therapy companies in Quebec, and Pierre was heading one of them not too long ago. So check your books. There's more technologies in Quebec that you actually
yeah, no, it's I know that there are cell technology companies, that's for sure. I just meant, like CAR T style, but certainly you're correct. There are many more startups.
I had a very general question. We see more and more, I'm sorry to generalize it and use that term, but American size Series A and faster IPO track for Canadian biotechs.
Yep.
So do you see that trend continuing? I mean, Absella was a stellar example in the last few months. Do you see that continuing forward? And if we need to do that, what's missing in the Canadian ecosystem to sustain that to a level where it makes sense and it brings more value and not just a very nice IPO and then crumbles after that? Because it's a buzz at the moment of the post-pandemic era, but we don't want to repeat the year 2000s for sure.
So I heard about 4 or 5 different things that I'm to address in that question. So I hope I remember them all. Thank you for the question, Frederick. I think hopefully we will see more of that, because funding significantly privately and then funding significantly publicly are good things. To quickly address when companies fizzle only when they spectacularly fail clinically or from a regulatory point of view. We've experienced in 2001 stock market sell-offs that dragged down everybody, but certainly that hasn't really been the case in the past 20 years, except maybe for a period of time in 2008 and 9, but that wasn't really following any IPO window anyways. So for the past 10 years, we've had a very vibrant public markets, and the good news is the participants, those crossover and biotech public investors, are very similar to venture capital. They're very fundamental, they're very knowledgeable, and that's the main difference between when I was an institutional salesperson before Dundee, when I was in New York in 2001. I remember doing work with OrbiMed and Perceptive 20 years ago, but there was only OrbiMed and Perceptive and ProMed and Origin, and there weren't that many, Xmark, there weren't that many biotech funds 20 years ago that participated in the public markets. And now there are, 100 or more healthcare specialized or biotech specialized investors in the public markets, or large teams that exist in large platforms like T. Rowe Price and Fidelity, who hire 20 PhDs to administer their healthcare or biotech work. So, there's been a huge maturation and sophistication increase in the public biotech investors globally who act rationally and who don't just chase momentum. I mean, everybody chases an easy trade. Who doesn't want to double their money quickly and easily by participating in an IPO that pops? But that aside, we actually have a very robust and healthy public market for biotechnology. And that is, that is welcoming to a company no matter where their address is, whether it's Europe, Montreal, Toronto, or Boston, or Seattle, or wherever. Public market investors and venture investors, to much an extent, are quite agnostic to where the best technologies are. So, I think that Quebec needs nothing more than what they're already doing. You already have the right amount of venture capital. I don't think you need more. I think if you had more, there wouldn't be the number of good companies or deals to support. If you really wanted to give a kick in the rear to increase the the number and the fidelity of quality companies that follow the track of Repair or Clementia or Abcelera, or these sorts of this path, it's more that you could be doing on the creation side. And again, Bloom Burton forming companies is just one small way. We also support companies that we don't form, that are still at their Series A stage. And anything you can do, and we could talk about it maybe in another Café Croissant forum, anything you can do to really accelerate the creation of quality companies. And you do. I mean, you have Amorchem, you have lots of organizations in Quebec that do this, that are funded to do this. Iracor and others, right? Admare, Neomed, there are many. I'm not saying there isn't, but anything you can do to accelerate that and ensure that the best companies are being found in the first place. That's how you build the funnel. Did I address everything?
Pretty much. Actually, we heard loud and clear that you're looking for a good project to launch in Quebec. So I think we'll send that to everyone, and I think Vincent should expect a lot of emails.
But I, just to put a point on it, though, as investment bankers, like when it's not our company, when it's your company, that is our regular business. It is more likely that someone just has a startup and says, "Would you help us, raise venture capital or help us refine our business plan?" Like, that is great business for us. We'd be grateful for that too.
Thank you. Thank you, Frédéric, for your question. Philip Walker.
Yes, good morning, Brian. Thank you for a great presentation. I was wondering whether you could elaborate a bit on how an emerging company can access your services, your expertise. What is your business model? How do you function?
Good question. And I mean, a crude and quick answer is, you email me and we meet and we learn what you're doing.
Yes.
But the real answer, which is actually makes us seem, we operate more like a venture capital fund than an investment bank. Most investment banks, if they can get any business, they just get the business. And if they get hired to show it to investors and it doesn't work, then sorry. We operate more like a venture capital fund where we'll meet with 100 companies and then work with 5, but we're trying to succeed with every mandate we have by doing a tremendous amount of due diligence up front, the same amount of due diligence that the venture capital firms or the public market investors or the pharmas in an M&A transaction would do themselves. So, our process really is email me, email Vincent, come in, or let's have
in the chat.
Let's have a Zoom introduction. Let's have a chat. Let's have a croissant over coffee. And then let's do what a VC would do, which is actually sign a CDA. Let us understand your data, your science. The main difference, though, between us and a capital deployer, like an investor, though, is I find we do more building. So because we have all these services, most investors, venture capital will say, yes or no. And they may say no for now, and we will wait for you to get to this stage or develop this data or build the right team. This is your weakness and fix that and then come back. But because of all of our services, such as our consulting services or our seed financing services or our direct investment services, our advisory services, we're not just yes, no, we're yes, no. But oftentimes, if it's a no or a not yet, like we can't transact yet, we would then say, this is what we can do together to get you to that point. That's not always the case. Sometimes, if there's a really dumb scientific idea that will never have commercial potential and the company never should have existed in the first place, which is actually common, that's usually the case, it's just a no. But if it's a no, but let's work together, and this is what we have in mind, and this is what we can do together, that's generally the process that we follow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And Vincent just put in the chat the coordinates, your email and your phone number, Brian.
Uh-oh.
So you'll get
it's the office phone number, Brian. Don't worry.
Okay. You'll get some calls and you'll get some emails. But thank you.
There's my cell phone. That's okay.
Oh,
all the information, all that info is on the website as well for everybody.
Do you want my address too? That's okay.
Next question is from Lisa Johnson. I mentioned at the beginning that Bio-Quebec is very happy actually to sign a collaboration agreement with BioForward Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And Lisa is their president and CEO, and she's joining us this morning. This is following an agreement that we've had with Mass Bio for the last 5-6 years. That allows our members to do activities and to partners with the people from Wisconsin, and we're going to start doing some activities soon in the fall. So Lisa, thank you so much for being here this morning. I know it's 1 hour earlier for you.
Yeah,
and,
that's why you didn't see me on the camera at first.
I see, now I understand.
You guys, even now the sun's coming in. I don't know, it's not looking too good.
Go ahead.
All right, well, thanks so much for letting me join all of you. And Brian, thanks for your presentation. Yeah, I'm calling from Madison, Wisconsin. So, so one of my questions, and I apologize to all my Canadian friends, I'm going to ask a question from the US.
Okay.
On one of your last slides, you talked about partnering with various VC firms. And those certainly, there was one that I saw from, I think, Baltimore that I recognized. Do you ever lead any deals in the United States, or when you syndicate, are you syndicating as they're doing a lead deal and you're coming in behind them? I'm just curious if you ever take any leads.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry that wasn't clear. So again, we're not primarily a direct investor. So when we assemble syndicates like that, we're doing that as an investment banker. So those are our clients. They're not our co-investors.
Got it.
Our clients are companies. Our clients are every global investor in healthcare, and we make a market and bring them together. So those are the syndicates that we assemble. We sometimes co-invest, not as lead, but which does answer your question. But our primary function for supporting companies like Bellis and being the first to introduce them to OrbiMed and New Leaf, when we raised them, $50 million of pre-NASDAQ money, that was as an introducer, not as the syndicate member.
So do you ever assist them directly, U.S. companies then? I mean, are you?
Yeah, so actually nothing in our securities license precludes us from, if Jefferies and Leerink and Cowen and Evercore aren't smart enough to be poking their noses around Wisconsin looking for great companies to represent, nothing actually precludes us from working with companies in Wisconsin or anywhere, actually.
Okay, great, thank you.
We're just generally domiciled here, and yeah, and we generally work with Canadian companies. We like to say we have home field advantage. We follow companies from their formation all through their corporate life, and we generally have first dibs on things, I think. But nothing precludes us from working with US companies. In fact, Vincent is leading an effort internally at Bloom Burton where we're actually scouring Europe looking for publicly traded, very small cap companies that very much resemble the Canadian public companies or private companies that are unloved, unknown, uncapitalized, but yet have something really great.
Yeah, definitely. I may add actually on the US question that we have worked on the monetization planning on our advisory work with a number of US entities, government-based or companies as well, where we can work across border quite a bit.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Lisa, for your question. Jeff Ains, sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Annie. Hi, Brian. I know it's been a long time since we met. Quick question about the equity research. How can we approach Burton for the equity research? Is it only for a company who did financing with you?
Oh, no.
Or you okay.
No. I mean, David and his team will launch on whatever they think investors want to hear about. And, there is no process. I mean, we launch on what we think we should cover. David and Tony and Prasad launch on what is interesting to them. And if you're, publicly traded companies should just, continuously ensure that they're in front of David.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, but no, we actually cover lots of companies that we don't bank at all.
So the Café Croissant is usually 45 minutes to 1 hour, but there is one question that is going to conclude this morning, and it's coming from Geneviève, who you know very well at FTQ. So, and Geneviève is on our board, as what I mentioned earlier. So,
all right.
So I'll ask her to end this first Café Croissant with her question, which I think is really important. I saw it already. And also to remind everybody, if they can use the chat to give us some ideas for the 3 next Café Croissant with Burton that are going to be taking place in the fall, like one in September, October, November. We haven't yet set on the date, but you'll find out very soon. And your ideas are really important. We want to make sure that we're talking about what you want to hear about. So your ideas are crucial. So please do not hesitate. And if you're not using the chat, please email me in the next few weeks or so, because we're going to meet with Brian and Vincent to finalize at least the first one. So thank you so much. And Geneviève.
Yeah, honor. Thank you. No sweat, Brian. Thanks for the presentation. You mentioned, of course, that you have a coast-to-coast involvement. So really a pan-Canadian perspective. So I think I've noticed that in the last years, we've stopped a bit working in silos, and there is more collaboration between provinces and with Biotech Canada, for instance. But from your perspective, is there more that Quebec-based investors and companies and entrepreneurs should do to reach out and benefit from the national ecosystem? And if so, what do you think should we do to take a better advantage of that?
Well, the best thing you could do is think globally borderless. Like there's no such thing as a Quebec company anymore. Of course, there can be legally and from where people actually have their chairs, Quebec companies and companies that are headquartered in Quebec, which is great for Quebec and great for the ecosystem. But all global companies grow best when they think globally, when they partner globally. So in fact, you're actually doing yourself a disservice when you just think Biotech Canada and from Nova Scotia to Newfoundland to BC and what's in between. That doesn't matter any more than just thinking Quebec or just thinking North America. Whether it's where you source your technologies, where you source your talent, where you accumulate intellectual property or complementary licenses to build your company, whether it's where you perform your clinical studies, who you engage for your governance, for your board, for your advisory boards, it should be the best of the world. The CROs and the service providers that you choose to do your work, the models and the labs that those come out of that are gold standard and that best benchmark or demonstrate how good your molecule or your idea is. Everyone should be thinking globally. So I would caution anyone to give any thought as to how they can work better coast to coast within Canada and expand that to how they can grow their companies globally.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Vincent. Thank you very much for being here this morning. We've had at least one idea in the chat from Frédéric, which I think is very interesting, which is doing a case study of a company created by Burton, like maybe Apple or something. It could be something like that. So something to discuss. Again, do not hesitate to contact me to give me some of your ideas for the next Café Croissant. I hope you enjoyed this. This was the first with Burton, but not the last. We're going to have 3 more and maybe even more after that. Who knows? And I've already mentioned to them that we do have a Christmas cocktail party as well at Quebec, maybe a bit smaller, and it's not open bar, unfortunately, but hopefully in person this year. So you'll be able to come down. And
we have a space station.
That's true. Where we do it. We'll see if we do it at the same place this year, Frederic, maybe. And yeah, so thank you so much again. Have a great day, and we'll see you for the next one in September.
I forgot to eat my croissant.
Yes, that's right.
Bye, everybody.
Merci à tous.
Bye, merci, merci beaucoup.
Bye, bonne journée.
Bye-bye.